I'm supposed to be streaming on both my channels, so I will check if it is indeed live. Okay, so it's live on OOTLAM, which is an acronym for Operating on Truth, Logic and Morality. It should be OOTLAM ASAP, as in operating only on truth, logic and morality as soon as possible. Because no time is to be lost when things are getting worse and the people I'm talking to seem to be sillier and more disordered in their thinking. Great. So if you could all just make sure that you subscribe to both channels. It's really, I started my other channel because of a strike. I don't expect to have more strikes. Who knows? But anyway, the point is, if I get a strike, I won't have the spare channel with, I don't know, just a very small fraction of the primary channel. So I'm just trying to even things out and making sure that my loyal subscribers are subscribed to both channels. And what I've been doing is to stream on alternate channels in the hope that you will all get the message and come on over to both sides, or miss vital information about the progress of my thoughts. I think I have made quite a lot of progress, but the problem with thoughts is that you haven't got anything to show for them. So you may enjoy a brief period of elation, you get your eureka moment and you think you've solved everything, but of course later they seem to go, they seem to disappear in a puff of smoke because, well, nobody understands them, nobody remembers them, they don't like them. But we don't know. This is really the power of ideas, really. But what I wanted to say today is about hierarchy. And of course, hierarchy is very nice if we're at the top or near the top, but not so good if we are at the bottom. But in a way, we've all had experiences of being at the top and bottom when we are, in charge because somebody has put us in charge or we have taken charge. And hierarchy is basically a mechanism of government. And I'm talking about hierarchy in particular because I've just been talking to Vincent Bruno, and he just doesn't get it. So he thinks he can make up any idea and hope for it to happen. And perhaps I'm not that far off from him. I do have a big idea with no visible means of support, but I am saying my idea makes more sense than his, and I don't think he can deny that either, because my idea, however grandiose you think it is meant to promote the national interest, to promote imperial reform and support marriage and the family, which is crucial to, well, maintaining the existence of your society. And I've also been saying that really the five world religions, or any religion worth its salt, would have to maintain the eugenic practice of marriage. And this is something Vincent Bruno rejects. But we're, I suppose, quite a complementary pair in that I promote patriarchy and he promotes degeneracy while calling it eugenics, because he thinks the products of the people he sees around him are so degenerate and ugly and repulsive, etc. And I'm saying if they're marriageable, then they're all right. If they manage to find somebody prepared to marry them and they're prepared to marry, then, well, at least something is working. Hello, Luke. How nice to see you. I'm just going to finish my thought about hierarchy. I'm going to post a link in case you feel like joining me. And I remember we had a very nice chat when you came over. And so what I'm trying to say about hierarchy is that, of course you need hierarchy. Otherwise, everybody will be fighting to, be the top dog, and everything has to, begin from the beginning. You want, when you have a message or something, you want there to be, what am I trying to say? These white explorers, who used to be, I guess, anthropologists who basically explore darkest Africa or go to South America and have to deal with all these primitive tribes. What they do when they come across a member of the indigenous group is kind of say to them, take me to your leader. And because to save time, right? Because if you talk to the average peasant, he won't know what you're on about because he's uneducated, and even if he wanted to help you, he wouldn't be able to because he's at the bottom. So it just makes sense to go right to the top. But just for doing that, people kind of tell me off for being, I don't know, bossy or something. But when you think about even social media platforms, what do they do but kind of give you your imaginary kingdom, like your Discord server, your YouTube channel, to to give you an echo chamber, basically, to make you think that yeah, you can ban anyone, you can you know um, time anyone out, and indeed that is part of the attraction. But if you do it too much, then you are in effect confining yourself to an echo chamber, and you're not getting the benefit of the healthy interaction that you otherwise would get, and your content will suffer as a result. And I understand, I suppose, a long time ago, I did have a prickly, rather easily bruised ego, but after years of political activism, I do now have the hide of a rhinoceros. So, it's all water off a duck's back to me. But on the question of hierarchy, you kind of need somebody at the top to say, this person, they're all right, or, this person, get rid of him. I mean, obviously that's going to happen. And obviously our sense of justice is affected by whether these decisions are rational or fair. And then we should have the free speech with which to discuss these things in a um, well, honest and rational way. And then there will be these, norms of behavior and how you talk about these things. And, obviously in our different kingdoms of channels, we have very different ideas of um, doing things. I'm a bit of a laissez-faire person anyway. I was once told that people tend to behave, even though, my earlier years of streaming, I would actually just go to bed and let people do their thing, and it would be fine. And for some reason, people kind of, you know, absorb the ethos of my channel and tended to behave themselves and had, very good conversations. I think you can still find them on Odyssey. If you're looking for these, particularly long streams, I think 7 hour streams when I go to bed, um, and it's mostly Americans. So I guess my difficulty is, I mean, of course, ideally, I'd just like to go to, the most distinguished American intellectual in the whole of America, and then I explain my idea to him, and hopefully, he cares about the American people and will be listening about, you know, um, maintaining the eugenic practice of marriage and supporting married parents with, you know, social privilege at the very least, if not tax breaks. So all these things need to come from the top. And I get asked how I envisage my ideas being adopted, and actually I do have a very detailed um, picture of how my success, if it ever happens, would take place, and it would have to be a series of interviews on mainstream media, and that would, launch it. If CNN or BBC or at the very least a biggish YouTuber uh, interviews me, then it would be a start. I'm not at this stage, seeking any kind of endorsement, but just pe- just somebody capable of understanding what I'm saying. And of course, they're very welcome to disagree. And, and then we would have a kind of dialogue. And talking of dialogues, I don't think people understand the concept of dialogue. It's more, um, I speak, I let you speak, and I speak, and that's it. Off you go. Goodbye. It's that kind of idea. And this is a kind of practice, I imagine, that a monarch granting an audience to his, you know, subjects would do. So you better make sure that you have your thing ready to say to the monarch, and you make sure you say it clearly and that he understands. But you can't check. I mean, you can't say, could you repeat back to me what you think I said, and that sort of thing. And would you mind telling me if you agree, or if you see any holes in my arguments? And, you can't do that, obviously. But this is ideally it's a minimum of what anyone with a proper proposal wants. And that's why you have these things called meetings, and then you have minutes of a meeting, and agenda, and uh, those present, and minutes taken, and that kind of thing. Obviously many centuries needed to pass by before the European thought, well, we can't just sit here and chit chat. So we have to say, well, who's here? What was the purpose of the meeting? Is it an AGM, an extraordinary general meeting, or whatever it is? And then, um, and then they talk about business and what it is. There's an agenda, and I know this sounds far too businesslike for people at the TLC. But the point is, obviously I have an agenda, and the others just have the agenda of hanging out and, chit chatting and talking about their gardens and stuff like that. And obviously, it is important to participate in the community. And apparently, I've been invited to participate in this um, reading of Macbeth. So I shall do my best. I don't know when it is to take place. I believe it's on Grim Grizz's channel. Have I said everything I wanted to say about hierarchy? No, I haven't, because I was talking to Vincent, and then I was saying, look, stop taking an interest in these ridiculous characters that have popped up, like, Dan Bilzerian and John Fishback and who's the other guy? I think that there's the Democrat candidate, and there's the Republican candidate, and then there's the anti-Semite, and then there's the Islamophobe, something like that. And it doesn't matter what you vote for, because nothing will change. And I've noticed that recently the discourse has been more looser, and more things being allowed to be said, usually with regard to loosening the restrictions of hate speech, which is a good thing. But obviously we should also bear in mind that these things can also bite us on the bum. But I think obviously it's better to be able to say more than to just beat about the bush. And the thing about speech is that a lot of people are not the best speakers, and a lot of people are thinking aloud, and this can make me impatient. And so we come back to the question of hierarchy. Surely, when you're discussing a subject, if you do decide to discuss a subject, it should be reflected in your title about what you're going to say. It should usually be a proposition or a question, and then it should be clear, and then people will come attracted to what you say will be on offer, and then it just sort of orders your mind, and you know what to discuss, and. But if if it's some stupid title like um, chill stream, then I guess you're just telling people to spoil your chill stream by trolling you and exposing their genitalia, or the usual thing people do. And this is not constructive. So what is our purpose as YouTubers? We obviously we want praise, and the most objective form of praise is, this is hierarchical. You get, if you get more live viewers, if you get more subscribers, more comments, etc., then you're showing engagement, and YouTube kind of rewards you and pats you on the head. But what about the quality of the stream? I don't think people give as much thought to the quality of their streams. I think, oh, this is a list. I've got, quite a few live viewers. I've got more than I did, last month, and that's an improvement. And they don't really concentrate on the content of their conversation, because otherwise it's just a waste of time. Yes, I know some people just stream because they're lonely, right? Or they're trouble. They want their friends to come and post sympathetic comments, and then um, and obviously different people want different things, and a lot of political activists end up becoming YouTubers because then they're afraid to say things that are unpopular with their viewers and subscribers and lose viewers and subscribers, and so they mince their words and they don't really say what they mean, and this drives me crazy because what's the point of all these different media that allows you all this self-expression, and you're too afraid because you're afraid of people who are, well, most of the time they are lower in status than you are, because they're easily frightened, they're easily confused, they don't know what you're talking about, in which case you keep explaining and explaining until they finally get it, and then invite them to disagree if that's the case. No, I'm saying that all these trolls, Luke, who who just enjoy disrupting people's streams. But the thing is, with you annoy them for one whole hour, and then I don't think you do it now so much, talking about the rules, because once you tell them not to do it, you put in their heads the idea of doing it. And I'm not the only one to say that. Shari has told you, if you tell them not to do something before they've even done it, they will want to do it. And I guess my complaint is that you're not having a proper conversation. If it's just a queue of rather sad people come to do their show and tell, and think aloud, and you're not really having a conversation with them, or a dialogue that leads anywhere. Because I've been to so-called political meetings when they don't even bother engaging with you. They just let a whole bunch of people come and say their piece, and there's no engagement. Not I agree, I don't agree. Questions. It's sort of, it's like a queue. Yes, you've had your turn. Off you go. You've had your turn. Bye bye, and that sort of thing. Yes, do whatever you want, Luke. I'm just explaining to you, what I find so annoying, and you're very welcome to join me. But um, maybe your nerves do not permit an actual conversation. But my subject was hierarchy, which is the quickest way to do things. You want something done, you go straight to the top. But in this, um, in the West, society is very opaque. Everybody pretends to be equal, and I guess the smartest people, somehow manage to get their way while pretending to be equal. And not everybody has, this kind of double think that is necessary for you to get by. On the one hand, you pretend, oh, just call me by my first name, but actually I'm your boss, so you better watch out. And so a lot of people get confused and they get angry and they think, but I thought we were all equal, and it seems we're not really, and um, uh, well, then there's a lot of anger and frustration and hatred and complaints. But fundamentally, the the point is really to decide what you want to do. And, obviously, Luke and I have, very different agendas. I want to have a conversation, and Luke is maybe just happy to have a lot of people queue up and turn up. And even if they don't really say anything much, it feeds this ego that so many people, turn up, even though they don't really say anything. But, in these large streams, you don't really get to say anything. I mean, you might get your turn and you say your thing and then you're sent on your way. There's no dialogue. It's like, yes, you say this thing and I say my thing and you say this thing, the end. Which I guess for people who want a proper dialogue, it's a waste of time and very frustrating. And if people can't understand your idea, then, well, surely if you cared enough about your idea, you'd explain further. But I think a lot of it is just ego. I do understand. So we see the importance of hierarchy, in the military. So, obviously they have to make sure that the military is fit for purpose, and the least they can do is, you know, use the most um, transparent hierarchy, so people know, who they are, where they stand in relation to everyone else, and behave accordingly and follow orders and pass them down, and you know report to their officer, etc. Because if they all pretended, if all the armed forces pretended that they were all equal, then of course nothing would get done. And this is exactly the problem that I'm talking about. Everybody thinks they're equal. It's like, no, you're not equal if you can't explain yourself properly. If you just you really have nothing to say, or you can't express yourself clearly, or whatever it is that you manage to express clearly, it doesn't lead anywhere. You just want your, time for self-expression. And but then, we have to consider the preferences of the YouTuber concerned. And I guess a lot of people just want to show off, their friends. I've got so many viewers, and they want to come and talk to me and be on my platform and say nothing in particular, and it's just chit chat. But that's all I wanted to say. Really, it is crucial to have hierarchy. So, back to the issue of Vincent. So, I was saying on the question of how politics should be organized, not just in America, but really in the rest of the world, because representative democracy is a fraud on the voting public. Because Cale Zeldin talks about kayfabe, and I would say for British viewers, we have what is called a Punt and Judy show, where the different politicians of the different parties pretend to square up to each other and debate each other, but it's all empty. The policies are the same. The European leaders, so-called, really just take orders from Washington, and the stories that they keep feeding us are silly and silly, like clavicular, for God's sakes, clavicular. These are stories of malign encouragement. Telling men that they can just, behave like crazy bitches who have endless cosmetic surgery to make themselves attractive. And I keep hearing, all these men talking about clavicular, like, oh, maybe I should do what he does. And I think it's the deep state, really, just feeding people stupid stories to get them to fight and, get them to, maybe harm themselves or kill themselves after they've harmed themselves. And um, and in the meantime, nobody really wants to talk about the nuts and bolts of having a functioning political system, because on the one hand, everybody thinks thinks they're Christian. I think they kind of think they're Christian, or maybe they don't, but they don't want to think any more about it. And then, I mean, obviously, if you claim that your moral system is functioning, then you'll have to answer questions about it, and then nobody really wants to answer questions about this. So it's one of those issues that keep being swept under the carpet, and it's been swept under the carpet for centuries. When did Christianity start to fail? I would say, well, when the Roman Empire ended, well, that was when it first fell on its face. And then the Wars of the Reformation fell on its face again. Wars of the Reformation is another way of saying the European wars of religion. And then I mean, you could say that all the major wars fought in Europe were failures of the European religion, and then the Europeans went over to America, and then they had a civil war with each other, and a lot of them haven't quite gotten over it yet, not really. So all these issues need to be examined, and you can't just sort of make your point, and when nobody really was listening. Yes, you can think, yes, I think I managed to say what I wanted to say, but oh dear, nobody was listening, and certainly nobody responded, or whoever responded was not making sound arguments or valid arguments, or totally misunderstood what I said, and I couldn't really address that. And you don't know if they were doing it on purpose or not. So it's quite unsatisfactory. Well, yes, well done for making this point about the carpet being lumpy, and you trip over it, and then you hurt yourself. I'm so glad you find this all so incredibly entertaining. You see, you can just talk to the chat, and then it's actually quite entertaining. Right. Let me look at the chat a bit better. Well, I get the feeling that academia is pretty dysfunctional. And obviously it's sort of expanded beyond what it needs to expand. And you can't have all these people going to university, because somebody's got to do the work, right? Somebody's got to do the grunt work, as you Americans say. Somebody's got to do the fetching and the carrying, and all the stuff that nobody wants to do. And obviously you need a proper working class that is actually composed of people in your country and not imported from some country you've bombed. Are there examples of dialogues and debates that shape your hierarchical model you might point to, so to have an idea of the kind of discourse you desire? Well, you could just type, whatever topic you want. I mean, people know what I want to go on about, secular Quranism with American characteristics. America, because it's a global hegemon, and if America adopts it, then so will its vassal states in Europe. And obviously I would seek the quickest way. And also I think Americans would be happier, when they know what rules they have. That's kind of easy to find, because at the moment, it's whatever Congress might make up. in its corruption and incompetence. So you don't want that. How can you break your jaw 3 times in one morning? Okay. Have I made my point? So really, I'm really complaining about Vincent, who basically mocked me and said, oh, who cares about George Washington? And I said to him, look, surely in any society there will be, a list of low status beliefs and high status beliefs. And then I said, truth could be what is not in dispute, and truth could also be um, the opinion of the powerful. And obviously, the church, when you all took it seriously, would be powerful, the opinion of your Supreme Court judge could be powerful, the opinion of your president, though apparently not at the moment, not this president. So there's a kind of hierarchy. Obviously, if you think, conspiracy theories, the low status beliefs, white supremacy, that's low status. But you see, the government could raise it in status if it chose to do so. So what can be, low status today could be high status tomorrow, depending on who's in charge. So we never really know. And I think it should be grounded, because we know these politicians change their minds all the time to fit in with the times, as they say. And we do want, for social and moral and economic stability, eternal and universal laws. So what we need to do is agree on a minimum number of laws, or a minimum standard of compliance with, the rules. And I'm saying that the minimum is obviously, what is legal and what isn't. So, people will always, argue about, your morality is not my morality, because my religion is not your religion, or my denomination is not your denomination, and who are you to tell me? And so on and so forth. So at the end of the day, we need just the objective legal standard. It's like, is there a law against it or not? And then, all these ethical and moral concerns is, yeah, well, you can argue about it amongst yourselves, but if you fall below a certain legal standard, you'll have to hire lawyers to argue about it for you in court, and you may or may not end up in jail, or worse. So I'm saying the law is the minimum standard of compliance with, the law, the rules of your society. And once we agree that this is obviously, logically, the lower standard, then we can start talking about, what laws we think would be acceptable, and and then we can have a good old argument about it. And I'm saying, once you get there, you'll be choosing between matriarchy and patriarchy. And I'm saying that the West is now a degenerate matriarchy, and this is a problem. That's why everybody is so crazy and stupid and mad and, well, evil, really. And so once you decide that patriarchy is the way forward, because maybe we can just agree that marriage is a child protection scheme, and for the health and future of your society, the next generation should be reared in optimum conditions of a two-parent household. Hopefully, these married couples are, reasonably fond of each other, and will try to do a reasonable job to rear their children. And in order to maintain the practice of marriage, you need religion. And I'm saying it becomes easier now, doesn't it? Because really, Europeans are beneficiaries of organized religion. Christianity is an organized religion because we know what organized religion is. It's all about you have to believe in the right God for the right reasons and do the right things, which is, of course, easier said than done. And I know you've killed each other, over what you think is the right God and the right way and that kind of thing. But now you have the First Amendment supported by Chapter 2, verse 256 of the Quran. And I'm not actually asking you to change anything that much. I'm saying it's already there. It's already there in your history because there is no divine revelation in any other religion apart from Islam that supports the First Amendment. Thank you for all these comments. Well, I'm sorry you can't join me, but perhaps next time. You're always welcome. Do I know of conversations that are productive? I do actually find a lot of conversations productive, but you have to, focus on making it productive and, making sure that what you're saying is understood and, worth saying and understanding. Oh, I don't understand that comment, but never mind. Well, I mean, it's all about, what you discuss. And I'm saying um, politics and religion are really, my top priority. That there's no point. Well, I don't see much point in discussing anything else. Happy Mother's Day to you too, Burbling Bison. Well, okay, I don't know, Luke. Do you want to serve the matriarchy? I'm saying the matriarchy is not it's not going to allow men to maintain paternal authority because the point of the matriarchy is that it is the opposite of patriarchy, and patriarchy cannot function without marriage. And the perfect patriarchy is 100% married parents, and the perfect matriarchy is 100% never married parents. So you can imagine the contrast between one kind of society and another. Patriarchy is a kind of society that practices marriage, and matriarchy is one that doesn't. And patriarchy is, well, it is like organized like a military, and that's what's so important about it. That there will always be accountability because just because of the way the military is run, there's a general and his officers at the top, and they will pass down orders, and that there are ways of finding out if orders are not carried out or passed down, and there is insubordination. It's all these potential failures are um, are meant to be easily identifiable. So because of the hierarchy, the hierarchical system, you can easily find out, what went wrong. But with matriarchy, nobody really knows who is boss. So that's why we're talking about, deep state and Epstein files and Jews being in charge, and nobody really taking responsibility. And even the people who are supposed to be in charge, well, they're not really in charge. They're just there to um, be a kind of figurehead. And it has been suggested that maybe American presidents are no more uh, than figureheads like the British monarch, because they're not really allowed to do anything with their foreign policy because the military industrial complex dictates that. And of course, the military industrial complex and the fourth estate, i.e., the media, will be in cahoots with each other to um, make Americans think in one way and behave in another way. And in the last few decades, it seems that a lot of white American men have tired of the neocon wars. And of course, people who join the army would be the working class. But the thing about the matriarchy is that because nobody knows who's in charge, there are all these powers behind the throne, and we don't want that. So the clearest difference would be um, alpha male leader right at the top, dictator, supreme leader, president, whatever, and below him would be the beta males with their female partners who take on the status of their husband or their father. So of course the alpha female would be married to the alpha male, and and this is how it's all ordered. But of course now with feminism, people talk about alpha females, and what does it mean? What does it mean really? We're not really sure, and a lot of people get confused, and then they get angry when things don't work out as they hope. And I think we all would appreciate a bit of clarity. Thank you for your kind words, Burbling Bison. Now, I certainly don't think that women didn't exert a certain kind of control, um, even in a patriarchy, because the whole thing is that it's it's the division of gender roles that makes both sexes indispensable to each other, and that's why you had men do woodwork, and women do needlework and cooking, and now we have all these men who aspire to be TV cooks or something, and this is really not a very good use, because not everybody can be a TV cook, and maybe more men need to know how to put up shelves and do you know car maintenance or something. So the whole idea is that men and women are supposed to think, I wouldn't know how to do this. Thank goodness there's a man or a woman to do this for me, because I don't know how to. I've never been taught, and this would make um, relationships more complementary, and they would appreciate each other more. But if you allow men and women to compete with each other doing the same job, well, it will end in tears. But of course, at the moment, people think Christianity is their religion. Of course, it isn't. It's really feminism, and this is just swept under the carpet. And I'm saying feminism harms women too. It harms the marriage opportunities of women, because men just don't feel like marrying, do they? They think they can just screw around and make do with casual sex. And probably it'll, be enough for them until they wish they could they had found a long-term partner. And the same with women. And I think a lot of men and women are being tricked into doing what is ultimately harmful to their reproductive opportunities. And sadly, a lot of boomers, they don't want to talk about it because I guess they are the products of a culture of sex and drugs and rock and roll. And they may have been, liberal parents, and they don't want to admit that maybe they were wrong to be such liberal parents. I don't know. And the point is, if enough people can acknowledge their mistakes, then I think it would start a wave of penitence that will result in the kind of result that that Jonah got. He got the Ninevites to repent, and they were saved. And really, that is what we should aim for, really. So we shouldn't be doing the, oh, you can't say this because I know you did that when you were younger and whatever. I'm saying, really, if all the generations just admitted that they done wrong, then nobody need be scapegoated, and an act of collective repentance will just change the mind and behavior of a lot of people, because one thing leads to another. If you repent, you mean you acknowledge you've done wrong, and when you acknowledge you've done wrong, logically you're going to correct your error, and perhaps eventually you will actually correct your error, instead of just thinking about doing it. I don't understand your reference to the about Judith beheading Holofernes. Huh? You're very sweet, burbling bison. I suppose it's a bit presumptuous of me to propose myself as your Jonah, but the thing is, it's irresistible, isn't it? I mean, the thing is, I don't have to be perfect. I mean, that is the thing. So, though a lot of people seem to be thinking, oh, but you're not perfect. Who are you to tell us what to do? But I think we can incentivize a kind of repentance by creating lists of people to register their penitence. And then you can, penitent number 1, penitent number 2, 3, 4, and it's like, what number were you on the list of penitents? And then you can start a wave of, well, penitential thinking and penitential correction, and it will be such a happy ending, instead of the West destroying itself with its patriarchy. So I guess this is really what I'm trying to do, and I'm saying it's actually easy. At the moment, all you have to do is talk about it, right? You just have to talk about it. We must have done something wrong because, we're just not happy with our government, and we don't trust our government, and, everybody hates us. And there's a whole list of complaints to, well, I mean, everybody, even at the best of times, probably, they probably have a few complaints, but now they probably can't be counted on a pair of hands. So this is something I hope, people, during the summers, they go to each other's barbecues and whatnot, can talk to about each other, because it is helpful to refer to biblical characters, the story of Jonah, you know, all these things which are already there. We don't have to make it up. And this is what, in my view, makes religion superior because, you already have a belief system, a moral system that is divided into a belief system, a value system, and a rule system. It's already there. You don't have to create it anew. While, atheists, they will have to, come up with some idea that, other atheists will not quite agree with and won't support. But people who just, all you have to do is say, we believe in the Abrahamic God, or we would like to entertain the idea of his existence, and go on from there. Well, thank you all for coming. It's nearly an hour now, and I think I'll just wander off into the kitchen and fix myself something to eat. And although there were only two of you, I think it was quite a good stream, and I thank you both very much for coming and commenting.